In einer gemeinsamen Erklärung warnten der US-Geheimdienst CIA und sein britisches Pendant MI6 am vergangenen Wochenende vor den Bedrohungen für die internationale Weltordnung. Das ausgewogene System, das zu relativem Frieden und Stabilität geführt und steigende Lebensstandards, Chancen und Wohlstand ermöglicht hat. Genannt werden insbesondere Russland und China, welche die westliche Weltordnung gefährden, etwa durch Spionage, durch hybride Kriegsführung und vor allem durch Propaganda und Fake News. Den Aufstieg Chinas bezeichnen die beiden Geheimdienste als größte geopolitische Herausforderung des Jahrhunderts. Wie bewertest du die Analyse von CIA und MI6? Gefährden Russland und China die internationale Weltordnung? Welche Maßnahmen ergreifen die westlichen Geheimdienste dagegen?
Well, first of all, we should point out that this is an unprecedented meeting. The head of the CIA and the head of MI6 have never met in 77 years. And here they are meeting today. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is this the case? We know that Russia and China declared war on the rules-based international order back in February of 2022. February 4th, I believe, is when Vladimir Putin flew to Beijing to meet with Xi Jinping, and they issued a 5,000 plus word joint statement that basically said that the biggest threat to the world is the rules-based international order, which only serves American hegemony, and that they were going to challenge it by being the proponents of what they call a law-based international order. Since that time, we've seen the growth of BRICS as a direct challenge to the G7, which is the economic mechanism used by the United States, Great Britain, and others to control or to guide economically the rules-based international order. The rules-based international order is collapsing as we speak. One only needs to take a look at the retreat of France-Afrique, the French neocolonial presence in Africa, where they continued, even after they granted their colonies independence, they continued to dominate their colonies using colonial type control mechanisms. It has collapsed. We now have seen three major states, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, extricate themselves from France-Afrique, declare their independence, and come together in what they call the Alliance of Sahel States. Other nations are looking to do the same. It's a total collapse of the rules-based internet. And what's replacing it is the Chinese and Russian vision of a law-based international order, one whose economic arm will be the BRICS Forum. This is a reality. So yes, the rules-based international order is under attack, as it should be. American hegemony cannot be the gold standard for how the world operates. The world must gravitate to a multipolar, multilateral system where all nations are created equal and treated as equal. And what we're seeing is panic. The reason why these two guys came together is because they're panicked. It's interesting that they cite misinformation from Russia and China. It's interesting, in a U.S. court ongoing trial right now down in Tampa, Florida, of the so-called Uhura 3, black nationalists who were accused of violating the Foreign Agent Registration Act by serving as unregistered agents of Russia. One of the findings, or one of the, I guess, definitions that the court has put forward, is that it's disinformation not because it's wrong. It's disinformation because it goes against American policy statements. So that means that not just if the United States lies, but when the United States lies, because the United States is the largest disseminator of misinformation and disinformation in the world today, followed closely second by the British. You can be accused of spreading misinformation simply by saying that the lies being told by the United States and Great Britain are in fact lies. Again, the CIA and the British are masters of misinformation and disinformation. Both have major directorates dedicated just for this purpose. I have worked with both the CIA's disinformation branch and MI6's disinformation branch. I know they exist. I know how they operate. The world should know this too. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing an effort by the British and the Americans to shape international opinion by challenging The fact-based reality is being postured by Russia and China, and replacing it with the fantasy-driven, desire on the part of the United States and Great Britain to fool the world into believing that the only path towards global salvation is through continuation of American hegemony, through continuation of the rules-based international order. But I think the world has seen through this lie, and the fact that this upcoming BRICS summit in Kazan in October is going to be huge. It's going to be a massive event of global importance, and just another nail in the coffin of the rules-based international order.
Das Thema Telegram begleitet die westliche Öffentlichkeit verstärkt seit der Verhaftung des Telegram-Chefs Pavel Durov. Mittlerweile mehren sich Stimmen, die Plattform zu verbieten. So sprachen sich etwa der ehemalige Vorsitzende der Grünen Bundestagsfraktion Anton Hofreiter oder die linken Bundesgeschäftsführerin Katina Schubert dafür aus, Telegram und X in Deutschland zu überwachen und bei Bedarf zu blockieren. Angeblich sollen damit verfassungswidrige Inhalte gestoppt werden. Hältst du das für eine geeignete Maßnahme? Warum setzen gerade solche Politiker und Parteien auf restriktive Maßnahmen, die an anderen Stellen sich besonders medienwirksam für Meinungs- und Pressefreiheit in Szene setzen?
There was a time in the aftermath of the Second World War where the United States, the world's preeminent democracy, was forming a coalition of similarly inclined nations. And we embraced free speech. Why? Well, one, we were comfortable with who we were and what we were. We had, played a leading role in a victory against German fascism, against Japanese imperialism. Unlike the rest of the world, our country was relatively unscathed economically, physically, and we could position ourselves as the shining city on the hill. We didn't fear free speech because we believed that not only were our arguments the best, but our ideas that were driving these arguments were the best. We had no problem having others speak because we didn't fear it. Yes, we went through McCarthyism in the 1950s, but at the end of the day, what won out was the reality that limiting free speech is bad for America. That at the end of the day, if somebody's putting out an idea you disagree with, the best solution to that is put out better ideas to engage them openly. Today, we've gone in the exact opposite direction. We're the ones now defending bad ideas. There's nothing good coming out of the German government. There's no good ideas at all. The Green Party is a disgrace. The left is a disgrace. The policies that they are pushing are as far removed from democracy as one can imagine. I mean, when, Baerbock, the foreign minister of Germany, says, "I don't care what the German people want. I will continue to push for war in Ukraine." Well, there it is. There is no democracy in Germany because its elected officials don't care what the German people want. Ideas that run counter to that of the German government, instead of coming up with better ideas and be able to articulate it in a winning fashion against the German people, they seek to suppress free speech. This is, of course, the tool that autocracies use, dictatorships use, and that's the direction that Germany's going. I would say, Germany, learn from your history, because that's sort of what happened with the rise of the Nazi Party. And today's leftists and Greens are the modern day version of the Nazis. I know they try to distract people and talk about Alternative for Deutschland, but the Alternative for Deutschland doesn't seem to be afraid of its own shadow. Alternative for Deutschland is willing to listen to all points of view because it believes it has a better point of view, and it's willing to defend it more articulately than the government. The government can't defend its positions, so it seeks to silence opposition. That's what's happening. That's what's happening here in the United States, where we have a Democratic Party running for office that can't defend its positions at all. It's involved in a very unpopular and losing conflict with Russia in Ukraine. And rather than admit it, or at least say how they're going to get out of it, they silence those who have the audacity to stand up and say, "Look, this is failed policy. You are doing bad things. Look, we should probably have good relations with Russia. No, this becomes bad." And they attack the people that speak out, and they seek to silence them. The free speech is quickly becoming a thing of the past. The proponents of free speech today are almost Orwellian, because when they say we support free speech, what they mean is we support censorship. The only free speech is the speech that we agree with, the speech that conforms with the narrative that we're seeking to impose on people. That's not free speech.
Bleiben wir thematisch in Deutschland. Nach den Misserfolgen bei den Landtagswahlen in Thüringen und Sachsen scheint nun auch die Bundesregierung von Kanzler Olaf Scholz ihre Rhetorik anzupassen. So erklärte Scholz jüngst, der ukrainische Präsident Wladimir Selenskyj und er seien übereingekommen, dass Russland bei der nächsten Runde von Friedensverhandlungen mit am Tisch sitzen müsse. Zudem verschärft die Bundesregierung ihren Kurs beim Thema Migration. So formulierte Scholz den Wunsch an die ukrainischen Flüchtlinge, dass sie sich einen Arbeitsplatz suchen sollten. Zudem soll es ab nächster Woche an allen deutschen Grenzen wieder Kontrollen geben. Was liest du aus dem Schwenk der politischen Linie der Bundesregierung? Woher kommt der Bedarf zur plötzlichen Änderung? Und ändert sie nur ihre Rhetorik oder auch ihre Politik?
Well, for the moment, the German government's only changed its rhetoric. There are no policies that have been enacted. They're theories. Why did they do this? Well, it's clear, because they are being crushed at the polls. And I think Olaf Scholz understands that next year's now he and his cronies are going to be voted out in decisive fashion. So they do what all politicians do when they're confronted with impending political doom. They lie. They say things. But here's the thing. Angela Merkel has admitted that she agreed to the Minsk Accords is a lie. That it was simply a tactic to buy time for NATO to arm Ukraine, until which time Ukraine could launch an offensive to liberate the Donbass from, liberate in quotes, the Donbass from the Russian-speaking majority, Russian-backed Russian-speaking majority in the Donbass. Why would Russia ever trust a German again? I mean, this is something that every German needs to reflect upon. You elect liars to your highest office. You elected Angela Merkel, and she lied to Vladimir Putin. Straight up lied to him. You can never be trusted again, at least not in the near future. And now you have Olaf Scholz. He's a liar. He lies about everything. So you think now that he's changed this policy and the Russians are going to listen to him? Russians aren't going to listen to him. The Russians don't care about him. In fact, he's coming at this from a position of weakness. It'd be one thing if Olaf Scholz, at a moment of Germany's maximum strength, said, I am now, because I have a solid foundation, going to step forward and make a bold initiative for peace. The Russians would say, wow, here's a strong Germany that could have gone the other way, but now they're talking about peace. Maybe we'll listen to them. He wants Ukrainians to get jobs. What jobs, Olaf? One of the 500,000 Volkswagen jobs that are lost now because of your stupid policies? One of the jobs that the many factories have been forced to close because of your lunacy policy of sanctioning Russian energy? What jobs do you want to give them? Maybe they could join your new expansive German military. Oh, wait a minute. You can't afford it. That's right. Your military's shrinking. What jobs do you want to give them? Olaf Scholz is a joke, a literal joke. And every German knows this. Nobody takes anything he says seriously. The Russians don't. The Ukrainians certainly don't. The United States doesn't. And next year, we'll find out just how seriously the German people take him when they kick him out of office. This is just, the last act of a desperate politician trying to salvage something. It's like the captain of the Titanic after striking the iceberg saying, change direction to course 234, full speed ahead. No, your ship is sinking, boss. Abandon ship. It's time for the German people to abandon the SS because it's sinking and it's a disaster.
Der deutsche Automobilhersteller Volkswagen meldete jüngst dramatische Einbußen bei seinem Gewinn. Als Konsequenz könnten 2 Volkswagen-Werke in Deutschland geschlossen werden und damit tausende Arbeitsplätze wegfallen. Der Volkswagen-Geschäftsführer Oliver Blume nannte als Hauptgründe für die Einbußen die Corona-Krise und die wachsende Marktposition asiatischer Automobilhersteller, insbesondere aus China. Für die Bundesregierung und insbesondere für das Bundeswirtschaftsministerium sind die Zahlen von Volkswagen ein herber Imageschaden. Volkswagen droht zu einem Symbol für die schrumpfende deutsche Wirtschaft zu werden. Wenn du als Berater für die Bundesregierung arbeiten würdest, welche Ratschläge würdest du ihr geben? Wie lässt sich die deutsche Wirtschaft wieder ankurbeln? Wie lässt sich Volkswagen retten?
Well, the first thing is I wouldn't talk to the German government. I would sit down with the CEO of Volkswagen. He's the businessman. I'd say, what does it take to keep your two factories open? And he would outline certain criteria. Now, we know what one of them is. If you recall, earlier this year, Ms. Baerbock and Mr. Schultz traveled to China because they're dutiful American little poodles. And we told them to go to China and bark in support of what we call the de-risking. You see, we couldn't allow China to control global supply chains. And so we couldn't say that we were delinking. Oh, no, you can't delink from China. The Chinese would say, well, then we cut all relations with you. No, you see, we want to use China as much as possible, but we also want to appease the Americans. And so they went there and they talked about de-risking. That means delinking. That means reducing your exposure to China. Volkswagen is one of the companies that went along. And I believe at the time, the Volkswagen head told Schultz and told Baerbock, if you look at our spreadsheet, we only make money in one place, and that's China. That's it. Everywhere else, we lose money. And now you want us to de-risk in China, the one place where we make money. And as a result, if we do this, we're going to shut down. We're dead. We can't continue. But they de-risked anyways, and now they're dead. So I would ask the guy, what do you need to do? And he would probably say, we need to expand our operations into China. And I would say, what about global supply chains? He said, I don't care. You asked me the question, how do I survive as a company? I need to expand operations in China, make money, and then based upon that, restructure my non-Chinese business to reflect global reality. But we can't pretend that we are relevant in a declining Western economy. At the same time, we're de-risking ourselves in China. I would get a game plan from the head of VW, and then I would go to the German government and say, if you want to survive, implement this plan. Otherwise, you've deindustrialized your nation, and you're going to go down the toilet bowl of life. You're going to be flushed, along with VW, along with Audi, along with all the famous German automakers. And, instead of talking about Chinese supply chains, look at your own. Look at your own industrial base. Look at what factories have shut down. You literally can't afford to do business because you have cut your throat, and your throat, of course, being access to cheap Russian energy. Open up the damn Nord Stream pipeline, the one remaining pipeline. Get it open right now and get additional pipelines laid. Either repair or replace the destroyed pipelines. Put security on those so the United States can't blow them up again. Sink any American ship that comes within 20 kilometers of the pipeline. I mean, do what you need to do to save your country, because your country's going to hell in a handbasket. That's the reality. But stop talking to Olaf Scholz and the Greens and the leftists. They have no economic sense. If they did, you wouldn't be in the predicament you are in. Start talking to the industrial leaders. But my one little caveat to this is don't talk to Rheinmetall, because Rheinmetall wants to build tanks for Ukraine. And that's the quickest way to guarantee that Russia will never open up the Nord Stream pipeline. You see, you don't have to kneel to Russia. But I mean, if you are going to try and take advantage of good relations with Russia, then at least behave like a good neighbor and don't sell German tanks and German armored vehicles to Russia's mortal enemy, the Banderist regime in Ukraine.
Der slowakische Premierminister Robert Fico prangerte am Montag den Westen und insbesondere Deutschland an, dass überall vom Kampf gegen Faschismus und Nazismus gesprochen werde. Gleichzeitig ignorierten Politik und Medien der NATO-Länder jedoch die vielen Nazi-Insignien und Parolen in der Ukraine. Fico appellierte an die Weltöffentlichkeit anzuerkennen, wen der Westen eigentlich unterstützt in der Ukraine. Was sagst du dazu? Sind dem Westen die vielen Nazi-Insignien in der ukrainischen Armee gleichgültig, solange die Soldaten gegen Russland kämpfen? Unterstreicht das womöglich die historische Parallele, dass zum dritten Mal in knapp 100 Jahren deutsche Waffen gegen Russland eingesetzt werden?
I think anybody who doesn't understand the nature of the Ukrainian government, what the the power structures behind this government are is ignorant, willfully ignorant. Um, Everybody in Europe knows the truth about what's going on in Ukraine. Everybody in Europe knows the truth. To pretend otherwise is to expose yourself as a liar. And I don't have time for liars. So at least for Europe, be honest with yourselves. You know you support Banderist ideology. You know what the power structures are behind the Zelensky regime. You know what Ukrainian nationalism stands for. You know its origins. You know that its relationship with Nazi Germany. You know this, and yet you choose to support them anyways, which means that you are willing to turn a blind eye. It's not just turning a blind eye, you're willing to just jump in bed with literal Nazis to fulfill the policy objectives of the United States. You stand for nothing. You disgust me. You disgrace yourselves. You're evil. That's what Fico is saying. Because to support modern day Nazis, to support, the direct, descendants of Adolf Hitler's Ukrainian nationalist allies, is evil. Russia's not evil. Let me just throw this out there for all you Russian haters out there. There's a whole bunch of you out there. I did a debate. You can find it. It was a written debate with somebody who made the argument that Europe can't trust Russia as a supplier of energy. This was a debate we did in 2019, I believe. Can't trust Russia as a supplier of energy. Russia's unreliable. Russia uses energy for political purposes. Russia will never respect the contracts that is written. Okay, here we are, 2 years into a war where NATO has aligned itself in a proxy conflict with Russia, using Ukraine as the proxy. Russia has stood by every single contract it has signed. Russia hasn't violated a single contract. Russia could destroy Europe in a heartbeat simply by cutting off, by doing that which all the people said Russia would do, by cutting Europe off from its energy. But that's not how Russia operates. Russia is a industry leader, and you become an industry leader not by violating your contracts, but by adhering to the contracts, not by being an unreliable source of energy, but being the most reliable source of energy. This is the reality. So for all you Europeans that bought into the lies, reflect on that when you look at your bills. Reflect on that when you feel the cold, the sting of the cold this winter. Reflect on that as you watch your factories close, you watch your deteriorate. This is all a direct result of the bad policy decisions made by your government that hinge on the American-driven policy of cutting Europe off from cheap Russian energy. Why? Because America wanted to sell you expensive American energy, and now you're trapped because you have no options. So, that's the fact right now. Europe needs to recognize that it is in bed with evil, that the Ukrainian government is evil. And I think it's time that you have to recognize that there's a certain segment of Ukraine's population who are evil. If you live in Western Ukraine and you've grown up believing that Stepan Bandera is your father, and you raise your children to sing songs in glory of Stepan Bandera, and you march in torch-lit parades, this isn't just, play acting, role playing. This reflects itself in actual policies that have Ukrainians willing to saran wrap people to poles, rape them in public, abuse them in public, murder them, that allows Ukrainians to say that they are a superior race. Where have we heard this before? Oh, yeah, the Ukrainian allies back in World War II, those Germans. The Germans once thought they were superior to everybody else in terms of race. How did that work out when Black Americans and Black Africans and Hispanic Americans and all these non-white people came in and kicked your ass? There's no such thing as a superior race, especially if you call yourself Christian. All men are created equal. And yet you're embracing a nation, Ukraine, that believes in racial supremacy, superiority, and acts on it. Acts on it. What's wrong with you, Europe? What's wrong with you, Germany? You should know better. And yet here you are. Only the Germany. You got to reflect on things. You got to look in the mirror and reflect on why it is this is happening. There's a glimmer of hope. Thuringia, Saxony. You proved that when you go to the polls, you can vote for people that support your background, support your point of view, support what you believe in, drive out the elected officials. That's a step in the right direction. But you must turn your back on evil. And the evil that resides in Europe today is in Ukraine, in the form of extreme Ukrainian nationalism.
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.